Hey everybody, it is Cinnamon Coney, your Art Sherpa, and this lesson for Lifebook is one of the mini lessons, and in it I'm kind of covering how to use a wax resist crayon and waterproof pens. I'm going to be using an artist pit pen. I will go over all the materials. You can find those on the PDF with things like the traceable and everything, but this is a real light lesson designed to give you just a little bit of fresh breath and seasonal joy as you go along your Lifebook journey. I'm really excited to share this cute fall fox with you. I hope you're doing well right now. Take a deep breath with me. Breathe it out. Get your watercolors, get your tools, come back. I'm going to show you step by step how you can paint this. So for today's project, I'm working on a 9 by 12 watercolor block. It's 140-pound paper, cold press, which means bumpy, and the brand that I like is Fabriano. I do love it, and I like their extra white quite a bit. I have the colors yellow, red, blue, and Payne's gray. The specific blue is phthalo blue. The specific red is Sennelier red. It's kind of like a pyro red. It's like a middle true red you could do primary to. I have Indian yellow here, but really for this, any yellow will work. I just like that it's a little bit biased orange to get me into those deep fall colors. I'm going to be using graphite aquarelle pencils by Cretacolor. You could use any pencil. These just also happen to be watercolor. I'm going to be using my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in black, and I'm going to probably use a brush nib because that's what I like. Assorted watercolor brushes, cups for water, and also clear wax crayons. Now, this is optional for this project, but it is nice to have these around. I'm going to give you a fun tip. John's being so quiet over there, but here's the fun tip. Guess what the tip is, John?
What is a tip?
Don't ship things that are wax in the heat of summer.
Well.
Because most of them had melted together, and only a few of the ones that I had ordered were still in good condition. So that's just something to know about shipping, and then also not letting your wax crayons roll into your paint. I'm going to move those out of the danger zone. This
inspires me to use the Crayola make your own crayon tool for the purposes of good. I can remelt all of the clear.
You could remelt them and reshape them into custom shapes and stuff like that. It's definitely something you could upcycle, but it's a thing that we're going to have to consider in this high heat. And
yeah,
and I'm going to tell you at home, it's not likely to discontinue. We may have a year off, but overall the temperature is going to go up. So we'll have to start thinking about, as artists, when we order our art supplies and how affected by heat they are. I'm also going to use a sea sponge. This is a natural sea sponge with a small hole. This comes in crafting, and we did check this. And so far, all the literature says that it's not ecologically bad to use these. In fact, it may even be good for the environment. So as long as that remains true, I'm going to keep using them.
All right.
All right. So that's what we're doing today. When we come back, I'm going to show you the first step of this project. So for the first part of this, I'm going to use my lightest pencil. This would be like an HB pencil, like the kind you used in school. This one is watercolor. And I'm just going to sketch in a sort of imposing fox-like shape. All right. I'm going to provide you guys a traceable if drawing is not yet your friend. Not to worry. It will be your friend someday. And until then, you can just use a traceable. That's perfectly acceptable. Give him a nice long little snout. Little fox snouts are quite long. I do a lot of foxes. I sort of just love them. I think I've done them since I've been on YouTube, just in general. Really long time.
Yeah, you have been.
Yeah. And they weren't something that I painted before, but now I just super adore painting. So it's weird how that absolutely changes over time. Give a nice big ear. This little guy does not have to be perfect. That's really not the point of this. And it may be hard for you to see my sketching, but once we ink, you'll really be able to see it. So I'm letting you see both parts of the process simply because it will help you understand how these items like change. Come down here. I'm putting a little scarfy scarf on here. Why? Because you can. Because, you know, he went to the Fox Mart and bought a scarf. But, you know, it's the time of year you start to get your scarfy weather out. I think I'm going to turn the scarf because, you know, it turned. What? Yeah, it did. I'm just looking at how I've got my scarf wrapping around. And then I'm going to make sure that he kind of goes into this. And I think I'm going to have him sort of raising up above the kind of fall trees. And maybe let's do something whimsical and put a little unrealistic, not real moon here. It's going to be the sea.
Yeah.
The little sea moon that we do. I'm going to also kind of sketch in an eye, just to let myself know where that is. Think about the nose a bit. And, you know, we have to think about how the fur might be light. Now, once I have him loosely sketched in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with my Pit Artist pen, and I'm going to sketch in these little elements here. You'll notice that the brush gives me a really nice sort of artful effect. And yes, this part of this is really a line and wash. Right? I'm making little short marks here. You would do this part even if you were using the traceable, the same as me now. Same as me. You know, because you got to do it same as me. I'm going to make him sort of fluffers. Little fluffy marks, as you do. Ooh, that's a very foxy eye, isn't it? I'm going to go ahead and put that little pupil in the center. How's that going, John? Think that they
Good,
can see everything okay?
I was just zooming in a little bit.
You know, the thing is we are being artful with this. And so it's a good place for your style to come out. Like if you have a particular style of how you render, this is a good place to showcase that.
I always preferred the cell style rendering.
Little furry bits there. You're so funny. Little furry bits here. You know, it's that time of year. So fur everywhere. I don't necessarily want to define that line with pen here. And the reason being is that I'll come in and kind of use my wax crayon to maybe create that. Notice that my scarf is very loose. Not trying to create an Audubon historical wildlife rendering of fox. I'm trying to create feeling of fox. And the nice thing about feeling a fox is that it helps you keep your relationship to your art sort of low pressure. And also, I think when we do like this, it lends itself to the feeling that things are somewhat artful and interesting. Now, the other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm going to try out these waxes. Now, understand these wax crayons work better on a hot press paper, which is smooth, than cold press, but I actually like their bumpiness on cold press. I kind of dig the effect. So I just lean into it and see where it takes me. They really took such a beating from that hot travel. Art Supply cautionary tale.
Huh.
Yay. Go life book. Art Supply cautionary tale. All right, I'm going to, while it's like this, I'm going to see if I can't come here and give myself a white spot there. Try to give myself a white spot at the top of the nose. A little bit in the ears. You know, if it gets on the paper, great. What it'll do is it'll hold the paper white, even as I put pigment on it.
And that'll be like a resist.
It's like a resist. You could use Frisket if you felt like it. Right? This is just another way to go. You could also just very carefully paint around these areas. If you're doing this and you're like, I don't really want to get another thing, because it's towards the end of the program and you were like, oh, no more, that would be okay. Now I'm just trying to make sure that there's some that's, left white here. Isn't that fun? Hopefully. You don't really know until you know what you did. It's interesting. You don't know until you know.
Right.
All right. That is the getting the design on the paper. Right? I think we can go on to the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're good. You're good. Take a deep breath. Breathe out. Let's just start. So the next stage of this is I'm going to wet out the background. I've got a nice big brush here. If you're wondering which one this is the Soft Aqua by Raphael. And I'm going to pre-wet as much of the paper around Mr. Foxykins as I can using this. I won't go into him, and because my ink is waterproof, it will stay put, but because the pencil is not, it will soften a little bit, and that's actually one of the ways that the pencil sort of disappears. I'm going to come down into him a little, down the page. Now, depending on your environmental factors, my friends, right, this will dry very quickly or slowly. And that's what you've got to figure out as artists, right? If you're wondering the watercolors I'm using the Aquarelle by Sennelier, but any will work here. Now, here's a tip. Turn your paper around in the light, and you should be able to see if you have too much water anywhere or no water somewhere, because the shine of it will do it. Now, my overhead lights don't really let me see that as well as I could, so that's why I'm going ahead and doing this. Now, I'm going to get my number 14 round, and I'm going to grab a bit of my Pyro Red and a little of my Phthalo Blue. Mix it over here, and this is just going to create kind of that neat indigo sky. And I'm going to just brush this down at an angle loosely. I'm letting the paint sort of blend in. And if we have any luck, look, our moon will stay moony.
It resisted.
Some of the color will get in there, but that's actually part of the fun. I'm going to do it pretty light down low because I'm going to want to come up with trees. Right, so this won't get darker. This will stay pretty light, so I have a chance to blend trees up into it. Loose, faraway fall-like trees. But while it's still wet, I'm going to come back up into the top with quite a lot of my Phthalo Blue and my Cad Red Indigo Gray color. The reason I picked the red I did with such a strong bias to yellow is because the blue has a bias to green. That means all three primaries are involved, whether we can see them easily or not, right? They're hidden bias primaries. And that lets me desaturate the color, and that desaturation helps it feel later in the year.
Nice.
If I wanted to be more bright in the spring, I might have used a red, like a quinacridone in the red, and maybe a cerulean blue, and a lighter, more clarified yellow. Fun to do, though.
Yeah.
You can always come back, too, and kind of suck up a little bit of pigment. So it doesn't have to be too bad. I'm really loading quite heavily in my blue and yellow now. You can see. I mean, my blue and red. Words. I use them sometimes.
I can't always see which one you're using over there.
Y'all can't always see which one I'm using over here. I can kind of play around the moon. Isn't that nice?
It is.
All right. Just pulling this down low. But I might come back a little bit, and that's just because, again, I know I'm coming back with some trees. So I'm using my big brush and kind of soaking up some, just for the later when I'm going to be running my little tops of the trees there. And I'm going to want to be able to blend in. Now we're going to call this a step, but we don't want this to dry. So we're going to go step, but you and me, we're going to work quickly through this before our paper dries. Now I'm going to get my brush in here and kind of clean out the blue. Make sure that this is still a little wet, as you do. And I'm going to grab some of my yellow, and some of my red, kind of make a nice darker orange. And let's see, yeah, it's going to blend out into the sky, but I'm going to make some little trees. And since the paper is wet, not too wet, not like really diffuse it wet, but still pretty wet, I can get a nice diffused tree coming. Get that nice little tree line going. This is a little distant, as you are. Okay, so the orange isn't the darkest orange that we'll have. I'll bring this down. And this will be nice because he will blend very beautifully into this, and then also be kind of maybe standing out. And these are far, far away trees, so that's why they're not in our focus. That's why we want to take advantage of the paper being as wet as it is. Just doing that pine shape as you do. Just trying to get those little distant kind of tree shapes into the sky before it completely dries. I'm putting my branches upwards because I find the upward pine branches are a little less depressing for me mentally. I don't know why, but that's always been true.
Yeah, it's cute. I hadn't thought about that.
Just, and that some people really like the downward weighted pines, and that's okay too. That's just, this is where our artist preference gets to tell us what we're doing. As I wash it down though, you'll notice that I lighten it. I don't keep it the darkest color that it could be, do I? And I wouldn't want it the darkest color that it could be. And there we go, just that distant little bit of that. And then I'm going to do a fun thing. I'm going to take my orange and hopefully get it wet enough to do this. I'm going to splatter just a little bit. I'm controlling it so it's not on the fox. If you have trouble controlling your splatter when you're doing it, all you got to do is put like a little paper towel or something just sort of over him to cover him. This kind of represents that fall energy, you see? I'm going to rinse that out, and while everything's still wet, I might get some of my yellow. Come along the moon. It's sort of fun and artful. And I like that. Energy. Now, I actually want the next layer to be drier a little bit. So we're going to let this dry a little more than last time. It can be mid-damp to fully dry for the next layer. So I'm going to come in with a slightly stronger line of trees, and those will be a little more defined because the paper is mostly dry. You can tell it's not completely dry because it's still buckling, but it's dry enough to hold a sharp line. I'm going to take a little bit of my red here over to my yellow. I'm going to make a really kind of intense fall orange. And let's come here and give ourselves another little layer of trees, perhaps. And you can see, because the paper isn't wet, those marks are holding. As I come down, I might go a little more into my yellow. Like kind of a little more red at the top. Apply little bushes around here. To find those little bits out. I find this part kind of peaceful.
Yeah, I can understand that. I find it peaceful too.
I like to look to see where I'm going to put a star tree on.
A star tree?
Yeah, this tree is a star.
Oh, it's a superstar.
It's a superstar, not like a star-shaped tree. Thank you for asking that follow-up question. Because sometimes I say things that make a lot of sense in my own mind, but might not be as sensible in everyone else's mind as that. I'm going to continue going. I got a little of this red. Maybe between these two. And you can see that this does sort of create another layer of trees. I like to do these types of watercolor tree lines. I've got a lot. I like to do just pine trees and fantasy pines, especially this time of year. Or do pines turn fall colors? No. Do we care? No, we don't. We just want a pretty fall painting. And so we're not going to worry about those things. Now, I'm going to come into my yellow a little bit more. As I come down on this. Kind of see me doing that. But that keeps it very fall, doesn't it?
It does.
And lets this blend quite well into what's next. So I do like that transition. We've got our background transition. We've got our next layer transition. Is looking good. That is the point. Back into the Pyro Red and the Indian Yellow. Again, whatever yellow or red you have is fine. Especially with watercolors. I find they're very color forgiving. You can have a lot of experimentation in a way that sometimes you can't with acrylic for color mixing.
Oh, yeah.
Because acrylic color mixing can be unforgiving. You know, there's just no way to get cad red and ultramarine blue to make a purple. Okay. They're just not going to do it this week. So, but you can weirdly get colors that are, because I think it's because of the transparent nature of the paint in watercolors that maybe you wouldn't get in acrylic. So I like that forgiving nature of it, and I like that playful nature of it. I'm going to rinse out a bit. I got 2 cups of water, so I can always get my stuff clean, and I'm going to just kind of blend in more and more yellow. And let that kind of rush down. Here's an interesting thing. I'm going to take some of my phthalo blue and a little of my yellow together. They're going to make a lovely green. I'm going to just make upward brush strokes while it's still wet. Let that go. Blendy, blendy, blend. So it's just a nice color. It's just nice in the color. Those lines, they're not going to stay sharp. The paper's wet. But it'll be nice for later when I get into this other area. Okay. this is fantastic. We do want this all to be dry for the next part. Now, you might be concerned about how we're going to get the brown fur on the fox, because clearly we don't have brown unless you're very familiar with color mixing. There are a lot of ways to mix brown. Green and red will often make a great brown. We're going to check to see how the Payne's gray. I think we're going to need to go into the green. So I'm going to add a little blue here and a little yellow. And we're going to get to brown. So red and green for this to get to our fox brown. So let me show you again if I can. I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow and a lot of my blue, and I'm going to make green. Get some red into it, and you can see that goes brown. Just in case. And the reason the Payne's gray didn't work is because it's just a little bit too blue. And that's just how it is. Come here and make sure my brush is white enough to kind of brush this out. Little brown fur. Now, as I come to where the white fur is, I'm going to definitely let the paint be lighter. Come around the ears. And remember, we had the wax there. Right, so that is just making sure that that fur stays pretty light there. Even if I wash in, say take a wash here, notice that it doesn't get into where the wax is. A little bit.
Little bit.
Little bit, but not a lot. Not a lot. Just making my brown. I like all the little browns I can make. If you want to just use brown, nobody's going to judge. Just sort of wash that in here as well. And then very lightly, because I know I've got all the grasses and everything that's going to be coming up. So even though I'm going to take this down low to fill up the white paper, it's really more about just making sure that we've got some. Now see, I added some black to it and it got a little darker. So I'm going to make sure that I kind of darken that ear a bit. Add some of the different browns around him. Or her. I don't know. I never know my animals that well.
He's a fox.
I just,
Foxy fox.
It's a foxy fox. Foxy doing fox things. Fox is doing fox things. And kind
It's
of
a fox on the run.
imply a little bit of watercolor hair.
It's sweet.
But again, the lines anchor it. Go right back into some orange. I'm going to make some brush strokes that remind one a little bit of hair, but the paper's still wet, so they're going to diffuse in, aren't they? Gotta get a little black into it. Well, it's the Payne's gray. It kind of takes it more into a burnt umber. I'm just using the edge of the brush there to kind of imply some darkness. Let's come around the eye. I'll go even in more into the Payne's gray around the eye. Let that blend a little bit out. Let's come around the ears a bit. Just a little bit. Getting a little more gray. I'm just doing it in small amounts so it doesn't overwhelm what I'm doing. Right? Because I don't want to take it over. You can see I'm just allowing it to blend in. Right? We're being super playful with it. Now, what color is the scarf, you wonder? It's green. And the reason that it's green is because the background is orange.
Ah.
And that's really going to let it pop the most. But because we're using these primary colors, it does feel as if every color really goes, doesn't it? Right? Yeah, there's a little bit of sky here that I want to kind of fill in because it's around the fox's ears and I don't want it to be. Sometimes I'll make those little repairs as I go. All right, I can darken my green with a little blue. And the even red. When we come back, we want this to be dry again, and then I'll show you what you do next. Everything's dried. The paper's still buckled, so it's not completely dry, but it's pretty dry. I'm going to come in and get my brush a little bit wet, and I'm going to pick up some of my yellow paint. And I want my pure yellow paint here. And I'm going to come into the eye and make sure that I get that pure yellow. I'm going to come on the edge here with some yellow on this little scarf. Maybe on the outside. And let's make sure that our scarf has a little bit of shape to it. Sometimes that can be hard to do, but I love watercolor because it gives us so many opportunities to create value and shade things loosely. And we can be playful with it, you know? Where it doesn't take a whole lot, a whole lot. Grab just a little bit of my paint spray. My yellow is sort of dry now. So I should be able to come in and very carefully kind of exaggerate that. My brush is dry. So I can kind of scratch a little bit of dry hair here. You guys see that?
I can see it.
Yeah, so the brush doesn't have a lot of water. And because it doesn't have a lot of water and the paper isn't wet, then it does a very nice dry brush. Which can be a really fantastic and kind of give this a rough texture too. Just a little bit of blue-green. Make it more scarfy, as you would. Let's grab some dark color. I'm just shaping things. Now, I'm going to sort of ball this up because I don't want it all over him. Right? It can be a little bit on him, but I don't want it completely. And I'm going to get some different colors. I think I'm going to get some yellow. Pretty wet. And where it's, you know, kind of dry, I'm going to do some yellow splatters. And it's okay if it's a little on him. I just want to keep features together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
The splatters are sort of like the fall leaves and dust and everything going everywhere. Sometimes it's hard to get my brush wet enough because I'm still trying to control where some of the paint's going. There we go. I think that's lovely. Last part, you do want it dry as well. So when we come back, make sure this is completely dry, including the splatters, and I'll show you how to do the finishing grass. Well, there's a couple touch-ups I want to do before we get to the grass. Okay. I'm going to keep using my pen, the original pen. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come here into the ear and add some little fur marks. I think I'm also going to darken around the eyes a little bit. And the nose. Just, to make sure that that looks foxy. Another thing that I can do is I can take this pen at this stage and add some knitting marks.
Oh, yeah.
That just sort of lets us know that this is knit. Some people do X's, I just like to make sure that it has a sort of little texture. And sometimes you just don't really see where you need that until closer to the end of the project. And also it's important to know that you can pen on top of what you have. Add some little flyaways because those are charming. Maybe a couple little marks for fur, as you do. Gotta be careful with it because you don't want to go too crazy. Sometimes it's nice to have a little fur kind of marked out so he's furrier. All right. When you're happy with how his sketch out is looking, you can get back into your brush, and I'm going to get into my Payne's Gray. I'm going to load up some Payne's Gray, and I'm going to begin making little grass strokes from the bottom coming up that will be covering up Mr. Foxkins. These might even layer up over areas that I painted. I just want to make sure that the toe of the brush can release the grass. You can do any fall grass style that you like. You can have seeded grass. It can be, where it's bloomed and gone to seed. I'm going to just do a sort of dark in silhouette dry grass.
Just give your basic grasses.
Just grasses. Just grass. And you just go through. It's very relaxing. You're just grassing up. Grassing the grass. Because, he's staying in it. He's just popped up on his way to maybe a forest dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just peeking up out of the grass to see how things are going. Maybe Mr. Bear is not far behind. Just play with it. You can see where it's over the dry, it really holds its form.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of diffuses and alters in the low. And I like that. And the resist is holding the grass back, which I think is kind of neat. I do like. And then here on the bottom, I'll do sort of a looser. It's still reminiscent of the grass, but it's just sort of looser because now we're wet into wet, right?
Right.
So we're having depth in the pigment. We're just not. You come over with a little bit of blue here. It's because I think that will be interesting.
It really is.
You could come through with your wax resist to do grass as well, but you got to pick where it is. You don't want it everywhere, or it stops looking like a texture that you chose and more like a thing that just happened to you on the way to your painting. Looking pretty sharp, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty okay.
I think so.
Let's dry it, and I'll come back and show you the final thing. Our pen is back.
The pen.
The pen, because it's such a nice black, right? And we're going to come in here. And we're going to make a little bit of a line, and let's add some leaves. So it's just an upward line. See how this is? It's the sharpness against the soft.
Having awful control of my camera there for a second.
Were you?
Yeah, it's just like it wanted to go all the opposite ways that I wanted to. It's like,
You could use a Posca pen here. There's lots of things you could use, but I just like the balance of the very, very, very hard lines and the structure of these little plants. They'd be like late summer dried out something. And that black is so stark against the light colors, the watercolor, that it really just shows up.
yeah.
Just a little bit of extra layer. A little bit of extra story. Don't damage your pen doing the work. That's a worry, actually.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. All right, now there's some depth. Intentionally leaving a little spot down here, so I have a place to sign. I could also
That makes
sign
sense, yeah.
in a metallic pen or, different stuff. You could. I'm going to put some little flying bugs here, which I want to do. You just sort of see their little wings. And then we're going to take it and just give this a signature in the corner. And guess what we get to do next? Peel.
Gotcha.
Now, here's my tape trick. You take the tape off in the opposite way that you put it on. I use painter's tape so it doesn't tear my paper, and I can reuse it because it can be a little bit pricey. it also, when I do this, allows about an inch worth of give for me to mat and frame my watercolors or work. So maybe this was in your art journal and you go to the edge, but you may also tape in too just to have nice crisp spaces around. That was fantastic. I love spending that time with you. It meant a lot to me. Thank you so much for taking part in Life Book this year. I think this is my second lesson. So this is my last time with you guys. And I just really loved having this time. I love seeing what you're doing. I love seeing your creativity. You are an amazing community. Tamara and the Unicorns do such a good job on this program. I hope that you're going to come away from this year a completely transformed, healed, and restored artist. So until next I see you, be good to yourself, be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.